Yay. Okay.
All right, we'd like to welcome you to this evening's program, Too Young to Be Old, How to Stay Vibrant, Visible, and Forever in Blue Jeans, sponsored by the Women in Law section and the Committee on Continuing Legal Education of the New York State Bar Association. This evening's program will run from 6 to 7 p.m. And during the course of the program, if you'd like to pose a question to today's author, please feel free to use the chat tab in the Zoom portal, or you can turn your camera on, unmute yourself, and ask verbally as well. At this time, I would like to turn it over to the chair of the annual meeting and programming committee of the Women in Law section, Laura Sulam, for some opening remarks. Laura?
Thanks so much, Ernesto. Good evening, everyone. I am Laura Sulam. I chair the Women in Law section annual meeting and programming committee. I am a senior director at Practical Law, which is a Thomson Reuters company. And before we dive into the fantastic book we're featuring tonight, I would like to say a few words about the Women in Law section. Our section has over 900 members, and we are absolutely dedicated to addressing critical issues that impact women attorneys and women generally. We are always looking to increase our membership and to welcome women and men attorneys to our section. Please reach out to us if you would like to join. As a member, you can participate as much or as little as you like. And if you're interested in further developing leadership and speaking skills, you can join one of our committees, such as the annual meeting and programming committee, which organized this book club meeting and helps organize other events, as well as the WILS annual meeting each January and the Women on the Move program each fall. We have a champions committee, which engages men as partners to help advance women in the profession, in our association, and society at large. We have a general counsel committee, which develops strategies and tactics to help advance women lawyers within companies and also as outside counsel. This committee helps women in-house counsel advance their careers and find and exploit professional opportunities. We also have a legislative affairs committee, which drafts memos in support of or opposition to proposed New York State legislation that affects women. So these are just some of our 17 different committees, and we welcome your participation and ideas and help for events and other activities that our section sponsors. Also, please check out our latest issue of WILS Connect. That's our section's newsletter, which is available on the NYSBA website. If you're interested in writing for WILS Connect, we welcome your submissions, so please reach out to us. You can follow the Women in Law section and receive updates on the NYSBA website. Finally, I would like to mention our upcoming events and invite you to join them. On June 5th at 4 p.m., please join us for a panel discussion of medication abortion in the post-Dobbs world. Current litigation.
I already signed up.
Great. And it's
sorry.
on access to an abortion. No, great news. Thank you. On June 13th at 4 p.m., please tune into our Juneteenth presentation on banning Rosa Parks, the impact of book banning on civil liberties. And on September 12th at 6 p.m., we have our next virtual book club meeting to discuss Ice Queen by Women in Law section member Felicia Farber. You can register for all of these programs on the NYSBA website. So with that, we will get to the main event here. Tonight, we are discussing the memoir, Too Young to Be Old, How to Stay Vibrant, Visible, and Forever in Blue Jeans. And we are absolutely thrilled to welcome the memoir's author, Diane Gilman, who will talk about her life and her career and, of course, answer your questions. Diane's story is a compelling one. It's a take on conquering life's challenges and harnessing one's own power to live a fulfilling third act. With raw candor and humor, Diane reveals how she turned personal heartbreak into trailblazing success and how her struggle with breast cancer became her bridge to love. Diane, the charismatic, pearl-haired queen of jeans, is 77 years young and embracing aging instead of fighting it. a fashion rule breaker with millions of loyal fans. She is an inspiration for women embracing their third act. Her DG2 jeans line on Home Shopping Network is the top tele-retailing brand globally, with over $100 million a year in retail sales domestically. Her jeans are also seen on QVC UK, Italy, Germany, France, Australia, and Canada. And in 2021, Diane was chosen for Amika Brzezinski's 50 over 50 Know Your Value movement. So I am going to turn it over to Diane now to talk about her life and her career and her book. And Diane will answer questions after she speaks, so please add them to the chat. Diane, over to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you
Oh,
so much.
I'm
for
so sorry.
having
The
me.
book, Too Young to
There's
Be Old.
I'll tell it again if you doesn't talking during the talk. I want to say that when I was given this opportunity to speak to all of you, I thought, oh no, lawyers, what? Well, why would they be interested in a fashion person? And I think to myself, you all went to school, studied so hard, it was all about education. For designers like me, it's all about intuition. In a way, we couldn't be further apart when it comes to the mesh of what it takes to do your job. And, being born in 1945 into a very conservative Jewish family, I'm actually firstborn American from Ukraine. Oh no, proper girls did not ask to go to college and law school. Proper girls went to college to find a lawyer to marry. So with that, I would say that what we have that is totally in common is a constant pressure as female to prove ourselves, and in really two male-dominated professions, because whether you really see it or not, it's pretty much behind the curtain. Fashion, every single fashion brand is funded and controlled by men. So with that, I have to say that I would not be here today, and I would not have written this book if it wasn't for a brilliant law firm, Charter and Krinsky, and two absolutely incredible warrior lawyers, Richard Williamson and Laurent Drogan. It's actually Charter, Krinsky, and Drogan. And they fought a lawsuit for me, and against all odds, they not only won, but honestly, the settlement was about 10 times what it might have been if I didn't have such incredible legal advice. So I have a huge respect for the legal community. Okay, so the book is my second book. My first book at the very pinnacle of my career, when I invented a middle-aged jean for my community on air of women who had gone past the age of 50, seen all the hormonal changes and said, nothing works anymore, nothing fits. I'd gone through the same thing, invented a jean that fit me, and found 20 million jeans later, in 13 years of selling it on air, although I've been on air for 30 years, there was no better feeling than not only to help my sisterhood of women in my age bracket, or what I would call baby boomers, but to know that I had had an amazing moment and once again followed my instinct and my belief in myself. But I'm getting way ahead. I was born in 1945, and from the age of about 2 years old, I was obsessed with fashion. I thought about it. As soon as I could pick up a crayon, I drew a stick figure, drew in a triangle dress, punched in polka dots, and the dye was set. However, here's the catch. My mother and father were children of the Great Depression. They were adults when they went through it, and they went through it their entire lives. It was a dark tale that absolutely affected everything we did in our family. My mother was a debutante. My grandfather came to this country. He was a contractor. He started building houses. He built the family a huge mansion in Portland, Maine. And overnight in 1929, the money was all gone. And my mother went from debutante to servant. They changed the mansion into, had to, a transient boarding house. And my mother was the maid. My grandmother became the cook. My grandfather became the handyman. So in my family, because my mother also had to wait for the Tinker Tailor horse-drawn carriage, this was about 1931 at this point, and buy all the woolens and sew all the clothing, winter and summer, for her 7 brothers. Sewing and cooking were what equated to slavery. Here I am, and I'm this kid, and all I want to do is learn how to sew, learn how to make patterns. I had such big dreams, and it was always absolutely not. Believe it or not, I actually had to take out our Singer sewing machine at night from the hall closet. I was like 9 years old when I was doing this. Drag it in, put it under my bed, get under my bed with it, use my hand as a hand pedal, and teach myself to sew, because you weren't allowed to do these things in my household. I was the only child. I was a female child. I was told consistently, you only have one task in life: get married. Oh, and by the way, as a female, your life is over at 30 years old. You will have no more opportunity. Your looks will go. So I had a very different point of view. I remember being in a market with my mother when I was about, must have been 6 or 7 years old, and there was 17 magazines. When magazines used to be really big. And it was Colleen Corby, teenage model, standing in front of the Empire State Building in this mink coat. And I remember pulling my mother's coattails and saying, see, Dad, I'm going to be a famous fashion designer. I'm going to be on Fifth Avenue, and I'm going to have a fur coat. And my mother's looking like, yeah, okay, how do we talk her out of it? Well, they couldn't talk me out of it. And I could not disconnect from what I knew was my destiny. So one of my first huge challenges in life was I had to choose between fashion or family. And I chose fashion. And I left home at a very young age. I was young, 19. I was in UCLA doing nothing because they had no fashion curriculum except meeting people like Jim Morrison from the Doors, Spielberg, who wasn't in college either for studying. He was just like monitoring classes. Cher. I met tons of celebrities, and I dressed for school every day. That was my deal. And what I loved doing most of all was taking denim jackets, denim overalls, denim jeans, slashing them, jeweling them, hand painting them, patching them. So here's my big story, 2 big stories about breaking into fashion. I'm supporting myself now. I'm doing whatever I can, working at a little boutique, but I'm gone from the family. So a friend who happened to be Jim Morrison's girlfriend came up to me and said, let's open a boutique. Oh, okay. We get this teeny little store, which is across the street on Fairfax Avenue from Captain's Delicatessen, which is where all the celebrities went to get their pastrami fix. One day a white rose pulls up. Out comes Sunny. He's going into Cass's to get a pastrami on rye. Cher is not eating that stuff. She sees our little boutique. Cher strolls in. Now, we were like a consortium. We bought our own fabric, and we all made our own little dresses for the store, little A-line mod dresses, and they were all $10 a dress. So in strolls Cher. She looks around. She doesn't say a word. She's gorgeous. She's about 7 feet tall. She goes back to the front door, and we're thinking, yeah, that's right. All these little $10 dresses. Why would she care? She opens the door and screams, Sonny, come in with the chauffeur. And they take every dress. We actually had to close the store for a week, and so 24 hours a day, we had nothing left to sell. But that started me, and one other incredible opportunity, and those kinds of lucky opportunities were really, they kept popping up my whole life. And I thought, you can either ignore these or you can see them for what they are, which is little miracles. So the other little miracle was I was dating a record agent. One night he said, Monday night, meet me up on Sunset Strip at the Whiskey at Go-Go. I said, don't be ridiculous. It's closed on Monday night. He said, that's the point. They are going to allow a singer to just do a couple of songs. It's only going to be record agents and their girlfriends. We were called old ladies back then. And it's going to be cool. Okay. So I put on my very best denim jacket. It's gorgeous. It's got jewels all over it and hand-painted flowers and paisleys, and go up to the strip, go into this vast nightclub. But I'm now right butting the stage. Out walks this woman with gigantic red hair, a bottle of Southern Comfort, and opens her mouth. And it was Janis Joplin. Wow, what a powerhouse. And afterwards, I mean, she's on stage, we're standing right there. He's working for RCA, good company to get a record contract with. So they start talking, and she looks at me and says, hey man, your jacket is really cool. I just took it off and said, you want it? I'll give it to you. Here, take it. I'd love you to wear it. And that started me out. Dressing, I would take their denim and dressing people like Crazy Slick and the Jefferson Airplane, Janet, Jimi Hendrix, Sly and the Family Stone, Rod Stewart, because I started also hand painting leather. Okay, so I'm doing that. I'm having a lot of fun. And then I move up to San Francisco as the music scene kind of drifts to San Francisco. And I have a little apartment right next door to the Jefferson Airplane Mansion. So life is going on, and I'm meeting more and more of the record industry. And suddenly I wake up one morning and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm like 28 years old. This is fun. The party is going to end, and it's time to get professional. I knew one person in New York, called him up and said, I'm coming to New York. Bought myself an airline ticket, packed one bag, and off I went. And I'd never, ever seen a big city before. I was born in LA. It was like a sleepy town compared to Manhattan. But I've dreamt about Manhattan all my life. So I get to Manhattan, and I know I'm talented, and I know I'm obsessed with a career, but nobody else does. I must have knocked on 10,000 doors and gotten 10,000 no's. So finally I was forced to take 2 jobs to support myself. I was a cocktail waitress, worst cocktail waitress in the world, at Kansas City, Max's Kansas City, hang out for Andy Warhol. So through that, I met Andy Warhol and everybody in the factory. Another venue and outlet for making some handmade stuff, but not a professional career. And in the daytime, I signed up with Bloomingdale's to be a sales girl, and I thought, oh, they're going to see how cool I am, how slick I am, how well dressed I am. No, they put me in the old ladies' girdle and bullet bra department before Madonna ever made that famous. So one day, I used to read women's wear cover to cover every day, just to feel like I was part of the industry. One day I recognized from women's wear the design coordinator of all of Bloomingdale's. She was a fashion expert at Bloomingdale's. She came into the department, said it's making no money. Well, surprise, they were such ugly girdles. And who was going to help her move everything around? All the other sales ladies disappeared into dressing rooms, and I said, I'll help you. Oh, and by the way, I'm a designer. I have my own collection because I brought that Singer sewing machine to New York with me. And I had sewn 7 little pieces. I even did my own quilting. So she gives me this look and says, okay, next month I'll give you 15 minutes. Well, guess what? Changed my life. Again, another event that I took advantage of, that I saw as a big door opening. She looked at the collection and she said, wait a minute. Went to the phone, called the president of Abraham and Strauss. At that time, that was a huge Brooklyn department store, said, get on the subway. There was a direct subway line right underneath Bloomingdale. And come see a new talent we've got to support. And between them, they ordered over $100,000 worth of design, and I burst out in tears. And, this woman didn't have time for this. This guy was the president of Abraham and Strauss, and I said, God, why are you crying? And I said, because I thought you were going to order 10 pieces. I don't have the money to produce this. I can't buy all this fabric. I can't hire sewers. And they said, you know what? We still believe in your talent. We'll pay for the fabric. We'll pay for the labor. And we'll give you all the windows of Bloomingdale for 2 weeks and double page centerfold ads in New York Times. I was on my way. So that was the second miracle. I go on, and I also invent something along the way called the Cabal blouse, which was all prairie stuff at that time. Everything was very prairie, and one of the biggest firms for doing prairie dresses was Gunny Sack. So that's what everybody wore to a prom. So I did the Cabal blouse, which was a ruffled blouse, and very kind of turn of the 19th into the 20th century. And we sold millions of them. It was amazing. Again, I never really wore the clothing I designed. I always designed for the audience, but not necessarily connected to it. And as that whole trend started to fade away, somebody came to me, and there was someone I wanted as a business partner. He was a very famous guy in the industry. He had partnered with Murjani to back and develop and actually invent Gloria Vanderbilt jeans, Tommy Hilfiger, and I dogged him day and night. I think in this day and age, we would call it stalking. I really wanted this guy. I wanted to get into the big time. So finally, I think he was just so beaten down by me. He said, okay. And in a meeting at the very beginning of our partnership, he said, close your eyes, open your hand, tell me what this is, feel it. I said, suede. This is the finest buckskin suede. He said, open your eyes. No, it's not. It's washable silk. I said, don't be ridiculous. silk isn't washable. Well, guess what? Yeah, it was. So I had the privilege of introducing washable silk to America. And by 1992, this happened in about 1987. By 1992, there wasn't a department store in America that didn't have Diane Gilman washable silk collection in their store. We were the leading #1 fashion moneymaker in our money range. There was only one problem. These guys had promised to use my name and together take me onto the Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong, because a consortium of Hong Kong contractors, businessmen were the foundation of the money part of the business. And they forgot all about paying me. So I got into a horrible lawsuit that went on forever. And I was crazy to even try and get into it because they had all the money. I could no longer use my name. Here comes the next miracle. This lawsuit goes on for like 2.5 years. I'm going crazy. The phone rings one day and I'm about tapped out. I'm spending $30,000-$40,000 a month on legal fees, and that's a lot of money for the early 90s. So here's the phone call, the miracle phone call. Hi, is this Diane Gilman? I'm thinking, oh no, what now? I said, yeah. Hi, this is QVC. Yeah, we'd like to have you come on air and design a collection for QVC. And I said, you're out of luck. I'm so sorry. I can't use my name. And they said, oh, yeah, we've got a lot of other designers who can't use their name. We'll just call you Diane. And that started 30 years ago. That started my career on tele-retailing. I was photophobic. I hated myself in photographs. I never thought in a million years I would be on TV. I did it, and I thought to myself, you know, I think I could be good at this. And I got a better offer from HSN, which was smaller, but allowed a lot more design freedom. And washable silk, shot #1. Well, this goes on, and it was amazing how much you could sell on TV, but it gets even better. So I, in the meantime, am turning very middle-aged, gaining a lot of weight, and the one thing that connects me to my youth, jeans, I can't wear them anymore. I've got a middle-aged body now. I've got a big tire around my middle. I say, okay, I'm going to take 2 or 3 hours every weekend. I'm going to go find a pair of jeans that fit. There were no jeans that fit a middle-aged body. So I'm thinking about this, and I thought, wait a minute. You're a designer. You've got a sewing room with professional sewing ladies. Go out and buy 3 yards of denim, make a jean for yourself. I make my own pattern. I do it off my body measurements, which are about as far away from industry standards as possible. We make the jean, I put it on. It's unbelievable. It changes my life. People start treating me like I'm hipper, like I'm smarter, like I'm younger. And I think to myself, if that one garment lifts my mood, elevates my self-esteem, makes me function better every day, wouldn't it be good for millions of women? Again, I knock on every door in the fashion industry to back me in this business. Because you have to have special machinery to make denim and wash it. Not one person believed in me again. And so, at the meantime, 2005 at HSN, we get a female CEO, a female who was with Ralph Lauren at the very beginning and founded and motivated and created Polo jeans. I take my jean to her. I give her my spiel. It's for a middle-aged woman. We've got a middle-aged customer that she's watching tele-retail. She says, okay, I see your point. All right, we'll buy 5,000. But she wasn't about to sacrifice the dollars you made in prime time. So she gave me my opportunity at 5 a.m. on a frigid, dark February Sunday morning, when who is going to wake up at 5 a.m. and buy a pair of jeans they can't see, can't touch, can't hold up in a mirror? Well, within and by the way, I had a host who was a 3X and screamed at me for half an hour before the show, I hate jeans. I'll never wear a pair of jeans. I'll never put on your jeans. She wouldn't even wear them for the show. In 3 minutes, we sold out of 5,000 jeans. And there was my light bulb moment coming to life. Total phenomena. After we made it successful in America, I then went back to QVC and said, don't you have networks in Canada, Australia, England, Italy, France, and Germany? Please give me the chance. Just give me a couple of shows. Because my belief was, no matter what language you spoke, or whether you were having fish and chips or pasta, you were going through the same hormonal changes as every other woman, and you needed this gene. And you know what? I was right. We shot to #1 fashion entity and personality every single country we went to. And it was crazy because none of them would accept a substitute for selling it. So I literally was flying to Florida to do gigantic shows, flying back to New York, had backpacked at home, was home for less than 20 hours, took that bag, and was flying to England, to Toronto, to Paris, to Dusseldorf. It was a crazy life. But, you know, there's an old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I invented that gene at the age of 59 and a half. And I'm cruising right along, and I'm really working, and really, really, really every minute of the day and night, because it's a 24-hour-a-day business. They're open 24 hours a day, and it's all live TV. I'm killing myself. And I noticed something is wrong with my body, but I just put it off and say, oh, come on, it's nothing, you're imagining it. Well, it got to a point where I kind of couldn't imagine it. And I went to a friend of mine who was a doctor. I was 72. He sent me to get x-rays, a sonogram. And Christmas Eve of 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in both breasts. Well, that's how the book got written, because I'd had a friend. I made a friend out of her named Jan Tuckwood. She was the senior editor of the Palm Beach Post for 30 years. And I called her up and said, hi, how are you? Merry Christmas, Diane, what's doing? And I said, well, Jan, I have stage 3 breast cancer. Would you be interested in writing a book and following me through my treatment? And maybe we can do women some good. Maybe it'll be my legacy. I don't know whether I'm going to get cured or not, but I think I'm going to take the whole trial of it differently from other women. And Jan said yes. So she came to my treatment, and I'll never forget it. My doctor, I lucked out yet again. And just through the acquaintance, my doctor friend who sent me to get the sonogram, he knew the head of all breast cancer surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital and Sloan Kettering. He calls her. It's Christmas. She's off in Marrakesh. She's on some cruise. I'm home freaking out. And she said, when my plane lands back at JFK, I will go directly to the hospital. I'll meet you at 8:45 in the morning, January 4th. No paperwork necessary. I'm speed railing you in. Jan comes with me. Here's Alyssa Port, who's written 4 best-selling New York Times bestsellers on navigating breast cancer. And she looks me up and down. She knows who I am and says, you look like a perfectly healthy woman with a localized disease in a part of your body you don't need. I thought, okay, my kind of girl, I get it. And then she says, Diane, women like you always do the best in treatment because you have worked your butt off all your life, and this is going to be your new job for the next year. Made sense to me again. So I went back to HSN and said, by the way, I have breast cancer and I'm going to have to go off air for about a year. Oh my gosh. The wailing and the lack of decisionary power, and what do we do, Diane? Maybe you just don't tell the audience and you just disappear for a year. No, not a good solution. So we go through it all, and I finally come back on, give a little speech, and say, I've got a new job. I've got a new profession, saving my life. I'll be back with you as soon as I can. The next day, believe it or not, I call up my assistant, who's, by the way, still my assistant, years later, and I said, so did anybody respond on Facebook? And she said, 135. And I said, is that good? 135 people? And she said, no, Diane, 135,000 women sent you their best wishes. It was really phenomenal for somebody like me who'd fought for every new level I got to in my career, really sacrificed all my time to my profession, which I loved, and I loved every minute of it. And I think it's a privilege if you have a talent to be able to use it and be effective with it. But this was amazing. And we wrote the book. It was just published this December. And I'm going to tell you a touching story because I know that I got asked a question by Laura, how did COVID affect your business? During COVID, one of my best customers contacted us through Facebook. I'm going to cry, and said, Diane, I bought your clothing for the last 25 years. She said, I love you. I trust you. I read your first book. I've read your second book. I love it so much because we gave the book out about 6 months before actually putting it out on the market. We gave it to our best customers. He said, I got a phone call. My son has COVID and he's dying. They can't save him. She said, I packed my bag. And what did I pack? And what did I wear? I wore a pair of your DG2 jeans to hope I could, to almost morphosis, get some strength. And I brought your book for words of wisdom and comfort, and had it on my lap while I was holding his hand as he passed. Oh, how can you ask for a better career than having that kind, and a better book than having that kind of effect on women around you? You know, my career has been totally focused on female fashion. It's interesting that I've never had a female partner except for Jan writing the book. But I wanted the book to be touching. I wanted to be inspirational. I wanted it to be aspirational. I wanted it to give women strength. And I really wanted it to give women hope that aging was not just a long, dark tunnel where you go in one end and never come out the other, where you turn 50 or 55 and become invisible. So when I came through breast cancer, I came back on air, but then immediately it was COVID, did a lot of shows from home. That was great. I wasn't totally well yet. It takes a long time to recover from that kind of chemo. And then I made the decision when we all had to start traveling again that at 77 years old, maybe it was time after 30 years on air to back away, to step down and smell the roses, except I'm not someone who's ever going to smell the roses. I'm going to immediately start wanting to grow the roses and sell the roses and make all kinds of stuff out of roses. So I was a little scared, but you know, I thought, and I love this saying, to embrace tomorrow, you must let go of yesterday. And I was really beginning to feel like Teleretail was yesterday. And because of that amazing lawsuit that was won for me by Laurent Drogan and Richard Williamson, I was able to do that. And I was for 5 weeks, I was retired, 5 weeks. And then somebody came to me and said, would you be on my podcast? And after doing that with them, they said, you're a natural. Let's do a podcast together. We'll co-host it. And I thought, ooh, I like that. Because I thought, well, I'm good at selling. I'm good at talking. I'll be a silver-haired influencer on social media, not knowing anything about social media. Within 10 weeks of stepping back from HSN, I got my first influencer shoulder tap. A hair care company that really focuses on white hair came to me and said, we'd love you representing our product on social media. Bingo. Within 15 weeks of stepping back, I got another influencer nod to represent skincare for 50 plus women. So I now have a totally new career. I opened up a new LLC called My Shining Future. And I named my podcast Too Young to Be Old, because the truth is, if you live your life and really follow your dreams, you will always and forever be too young to be old. That's it.
Diane, that is incredible. Your whole story is incredible. It's so inspiring. It's a lot to unpack. a million questions. But I love how you started off with the kind of the parallels of, you know, women in the legal industry and women in the fashion industry. And I also
so different. Oh my God.
I mean, like dealing with male dominated industries in both law and in parts of law and fashion.
And actually, even more than that, Laura, it is amazing. And if you ever have anybody on who's an actress or a dancer or a singer, people that have innate born talent, they will tell you that whichever industry they're in, whether it's Broadway or it's the music industry or the dance industry, the one thing the least respected in their industry actually is talent. Because you can't feel it, you can't touch it, but usually the guys that are in suits get a hold of it and immediately hold it too tight and crush it. So it's quite a balancing act.
And can you speak to how your experiences as a woman have helped you navigate the fashion industry and how it's male dominated?
It's very simple. I learned how to think like a man. I used to throw fits and cry And I saw the reaction and I thought, So a little bit like that movie, Think Like a Man, that I thought, okay, every time there was a tense situation, I would say to myself, how would a man respond to this? And that's what I would do. It wasn't me inside. There was a whole different thing going on emotionally, but I never let it show. And you know, in a way, that takes a toll on you as well. But it was the only way to operate. And every time I thought I finally found the business partner that was going to see my talent, even though it was ethereal, and I'm doing $100 million a year. Nope. As a matter of fact, the minute I sold my company and my name to a man, the first thing they did was say, we don't want customers who are 65, 70 years old. We want 30-year-olds. And they're my philosophy slowly going out the window. So you know what? If you are somebody who is has legal skills and that's something you always wanted to do, in my case it was fashion design skills, just get ready to have a skin of steel, because you may not be recognized. You may never, you've got to create your own chances to show your brilliance. And if I had to say one thing, I would say two things. Number one, I'm the most insecure person on earth. And at the same time, my biggest life challenge was having to stand steadfast and always believe in myself. That would be my number one piece of advice to women.
It's a great piece of advice and something
yourself.
Yeah, something you've obviously done since you were a child.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to invite our audience members to put questions in the chat. Just drop in a question and I will be sure to ask Diane that question. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for some to come through, I wanted to ask you, Diane, about the 25 secrets for a vibrant, visible, and relevant Act 3. You mentioned them in your book, and you also call them a rule book for women who don't like rules, which I think is fantastic. So
and that is, yeah, definitely me, for sure.
I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite?
I am going there right now. I think my very favorite, and maybe it's just because I'm about to turn 78, my favorite is growing older is a privilege, not a punishment. So many people see it as negative, and who wouldn't? Look at cable television. All the commercials on cable TV are about our physical decline and all these drugs you get to take with all these side effects. So for me, one of my purposeful things is going to be on the internet as an influencer, hopefully, to start turning that corner on people's attitudes towards aging. And one of my other absolute favorites is don't wear mohair. Don't wear a mohair sweater near a bramble bush, which means when I was younger, I wanted to pick fights about everything. If I didn't like the color and it was off 1%, I was going to go on a tirade. If I didn't think a design meeting was going my way, I was so annoyed. After breast cancer, I realized that was a terrible usage of energy. And if you marry breast cancer to aging, and you know that you don't have infinite energy, then I say pick your fights, or don't get near that bramble bush, or change your sweater. So those are some of my absolute favorites. And I think the one other one is number 11, repeat my mantra. Today is the youngest you will ever be. Make the most of it.
Yeah, I like that one. I think that one was my favorite. Today is the youngest you'll ever be. So I have a couple questions in the chat. The first one is, What is your advice for facing the "aren't you too old for that" culture that often permeates our society?
Just breeze past it. You know, people, when I retired, everybody had an opinion. Oh, go be on a cruise ship for the rest of your life. I hate the water. Oh, just sit on your porch and watch life go by. Not gonna happen. Shoot me first. So my thing is, every time you hit a wall, step back and think to yourself, there's a door here. I'm going to open it. So my advice, for instance, would be, if you are in your 50s now, and you're going to leave where you are in terms of a career, you know already the corporate world is not going to welcome you in. They're not going to treat you fairly. So figure out how to do something entrepreneurial where you can give yourself your own permission. What I say is, when you see, I hate to say this, but when you see lemon, make lemonade. So I knew that when I left, even though I was responsible for the biggest fashion brand tele-retail I'd ever seen, nobody came knocking to my door from the fashion industry and said, oh, Diane, you're so brilliant. Even though you're 77, you're doing better than ever. Come be with us. No, the attitude was, oh, she's so old. What's she doing in the industry anyway at that age? And just, you've got to know who you are, center yourself, and be really pragmatic about how you plan out the next phase of your life.
That's great advice. I have another question for you. If not too personal, the question is, who does your beautiful curly hair, and was it traumatic not having to dye your hair?
What was traumatic was not having hair. And I remember when I found out that I was going to go into the strongest chemo for the longest amount of time, I called my hairdresser and said, come to the house. They make house calls. And I said, and bring a shaver like what you use on male clients. And he said, why would I do that? And I said, I'll tell you when you get here. So Jan was here for this, my co-author. And I said, okay, Antonio, I have breast cancer. I start chemo in a week. I want you to shave my head. He started crying. I said, you can't cry in front of me. Go out in the hallway, cry. And when you're done crying, come back in. Because if I'm dying, we're going to be crying. But if I'm getting something taken away from me that's going to grow back, then we're just going to bite the bullet and do it. So I have gone for 20 years to the John Barrett salon. And by the way, Martha Stewart, who's on the cover of Sports Illustrated this year as the bathing suit model, and 81, she goes to my hairdresser as well. So it's the John Barrett salon on 57th Street. And I go to a gentleman who's extremely talented named Troy. Yes, it was very difficult when my hair did start to grow back, but I wasn't an ordinary client. You know, my hair was half an inch long and I had to go back on TV. I couldn't even take a year off. I took 9 months off and I was back on air again. So I looked like Annie Lennox for a while with bleached hair. And then I decided that it was not a good idea to put all that formaldehyde next to your scalp after you'd had cancer. And so I decided, okay, all right, there aren't many of us out there, but I'm going to give it a try to be what I call a silverella, which is a glamorous, silver-haired, older woman. So now that became my next project. After saving my own life and going through all that chemo and radiation and stuff, now my next project, my me project, was creating a totally new persona. And let me tell you what, it wasn't easy. We don't have. Well, now we do. We've got Michelle Yao, who won Best Actress. We've got Angela Bassett. We've got women that we can turn around to. And by the way, People Magazine, the most beautiful people in the world cover, will be Helen Mirren at 77. So now at least we've got a few other women we can look at and say, I kind of like her look, or I like the way she did her makeup, but I deliberately decided that I wanted to be a glamorous older woman. And I made it again. I made it my project, my pet project. I'm still working on it, but I really am enjoying it.
Well,
There aren't many of me, and so whoever's out there, come on, let's have a group. Let's make a family, because it's lonely. Yeah, I walked into a restaurant, I'm the only one with white hair. So,
well, you've succeeded in being glamorous. And Linda, who asked that question, had put in the chat, you are so glamorous. And it's so
thank
true.
you. I'm working on it.
One question I did want to be sure to ask, because it's a very common question that we get in our book club meetings, is on the publishing of your book.
Oh,
How did you
okay.
publish it and what was that process?
so when the book started, and the book took a long time to get written because treatment went on for almost 2 years, but also Jan was still the senior editor at the Palm Beach Post, so she had a job. The first book pardon me, I'm hiccuping, in 2013 was published by, it was a little publisher that was an offshoot of a really big publisher. That's what I remember. And so they came to me, they offered it to me. This time around, I wanted to write a book. And I wanted to write about more than just my life story again, but my life story plus breast cancer, plus how women age, plus support, plus love. So we found a hybrid publisher because it's unbelievable. About one day before the book was fully written, QVC took over HSN, and the new policy was, we're not selling books on air ever again. I had premiered my book on HSN. We sold 35,000 copies in less than 2 hours. I did not understand this decision, but I suddenly knew, I couldn't go to a regular publisher and make them a promise that I had this huge customer base. So we found a hybrid publisher who took on a certain amount of the expense. I took on a certain amount of the expense. Thank you again to my lawyers for making that possible. And they chose editors, and it was my final decision to invest in the book. But you want to know something? It never sold the way it would have if it was on TV to my loyal customers, but it became the foundation of getting that co-hosted podcast. It became the foundation of now me going into solo podcasting. It became the point of discussion of so many speeches and talks I've given that it was worth every penny. And then I love the title so much, and the title is so universal. So you have to decide if you're not, we did get offered, we had an editor that was ready to take on the book. But at that point, everybody was still coming out of COVID. And they said, it's going to take about 2.5 or 3 years to get this published. And I thought, come on, I'm 77 already. I'm not going to live an infinite amount of years. I want a book I can act on and take advantage of now. So I made that decision, and it is my nature to never look back, but I never looked back.
That's amazing.
It was a great decision. So here's my advice. If you have an overriding interest in a certain topic that you feel the world is going to want to hear or needs to hear, and you love writing, you know what? Start taking notes. See how it starts to come together. Chances are you will need a professional writer to help you along, but I'll tell you what, I write all my own speeches now. I write all my own scripts for the podcast. I really love it. And it was well worth the time and the effort. And it gave Jan a whole new look on life because she had just written articles for Palm Beach Post, but now she had a genuine book under her belt. So it was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that Too Young to Be Old is the name of your podcast. And I put a link in the chat to where you can find Diane's podcast. Here is the book again that you can buy on Amazon. And we are out of time. This hour flew by, and Diane, I'll reach out to you because I feel like we could have many more discussions where people could ask more questions. But I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your incredibly inspiring story with all of us. And you were absolutely riveting today. And I've so enjoyed this book club meeting.
This was such a privilege, and it was such a pleasure. And because legal issues dogged me all my life, and in the end, it was two brilliant lawyers that not only saved my life, but set me up for an entirely different point of view in what I call my third act, my years from 70 on. It is my pleasure to speak in front of your female legal community. Bravo to all of you. I'm sure that many of you have done for your clients what my lawyers did for me, which was win me what I deserved and more, and set me on a whole new course on life that allowed me to write, allowed me to get on the internet, allowed me to have my own podcast. Yay for lawyers.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end this book club meeting with that. Yay for lawyers. Thank you so much, Diane. Thank all of you for tuning in. Thank you, Ernesto. Thanks, Ernesto.
Thank you, Diane.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.